Anyone who can't score perfect on a test isn't my child. No matter how hard I tried or behaved well, my parents never acknowledged me. They adored only John, considered a genius, and looked at me coldly. The one who saved my heart was. "Then why don't you come to my place?" said Aunt Harper with a bright smile. "My name is Isabella. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. My life has been anything but smooth sailing. Let's start with my childhood. Dad was an ordinary office worker, and Mom worked part-time, so I was born into a very average family. I have an older brother, John, who is 3 years my senior. John was what you'd call a child prodigy. From a young age, he could easily understand complex books. He passed the entrance exam to a prestigious elementary school just for the heck of it. At that point, my parents were convinced of John's genius. They were nothing special, having been average students themselves. As for me, I was just an ordinary child. Not that I was poor in performance. I entered a regular elementary school and never had a bad test score. But next to John, who attended a prestigious school and scored perfect marks without even a tutor, I was nothing. John was always at the top of his class, and my parents were proud. They poured everything into him, considering the high tuition a future investment in John's success. As he reached higher grades, John got a tutor and focused even more on his studies. Expenses piled up, and I could no longer have the things I wanted. John lived up to our parents' expectations, becoming even more excellent. In middle school, he quickly became the top student. My parents doted on him even more. If John wanted something, they bought it for him right away. They also started spending on themselves more. Mom, dressing in brand names, said, "As the mother of a genius, I have to look right." And even started going to beauty salons. Naturally, our household funds dwindled. What to do was obvious. "Here's your food," Mom said, handing me a bag of bread. "Is this it?" It wasn't breakfast. It was dinner time. "We don't have money to waste on someone like you," Mom said, sitting down. Meanwhile, the other three had a normal meal with luxurious steaks. I watched in disbelief, eating my bland bread. I had always felt neglected compared to John, but once he entered middle school, it got worse. John is truly brilliant. A real genius. Compared to that, Isabella is, Mom said, looking at me coldly. No matter how much they shunned me, as their child, I still wanted their love. So, I studied hard on my own. "Mom, look. I scored 92 on today's test." I proudly showed my test to Mom, which the teacher returned saying I was the best in class. But Mom just scowled as if annoyed. "Huh? 92? What's so great about that?" "What?" John frequently scored perfect marks in his advanced elementary school. But I worked hard. Being the best in class. I persisted, despite her cold response. Mom took the test I offered with a sigh. Relief was short-lived. "What's the point of something at this low level?" she screamed and tore up the test. Mom mercilessly threw the torn test into the trash can. "Don't show me such rubbish. It rots the eyes. Now go prepare dinner." Mom left the room after throwing those words at me, who was staring blankly at the trash can. By then, I had been made to do household chores. Dad was at work, and Mom was busy with John's lessons. Tears fell to the floor. Why? I tried so hard. I didn't mind having poor meals, or not getting new clothes when the old ones got too small, or even if they were old. I just wanted to be praised, to be told I did well and have my head patted. Everything I wanted was given only to John, and I could never have it. Despairing over this, I cried continuously, becoming a child with hardly any expression. By the time I reached 6th grade, I feared being differentiated from John even more once I entered middle school. John, for his part, focused more on his studies for high school, barely talking to me. I'm excellent, unlike you. Influenced by our parents, John too began to give me cold glares. On a day when the loneliness was unbearable. Wondering if it would be just bread for dinner again, I sighed on my way home from school. Suddenly, "Hey!" someone called out, and when I turned around in surprise, I saw a familiar face. "Harper? It's been a while, Isabella. You've grown so much." Harper is my aunt, Dad's much younger sister. Apparently, she was the child my grandparents had longed for, saying they wanted another child because they were lonely as their son grew up. I heard giving birth in her 40s was tough. Harper, born when Dad was 21, is now 19. It's been a while since I last saw Harper, who lives with our grandparents far away. It's been a long time. What brings you here all of a sudden, Harper? Oh, I had some business over here. About this little one. It was then I noticed for the first time. Harper was holding a baby. Wow, a baby. So cute. What's with the child? It's my child. What? Turns out Harper had had a child at some point. Apparently, she's raising the child as a single mother. I was supposed to get married, but my fiancé passed away. Passed away? Yeah. His parents' home is around here, and I was visiting to report and show them the baby. I see. I frowned, realizing Harper had also been through a lot since we last met. But Harper smiled. Well, life has its ups and downs. Brightly. Aren't you sad, Harper? Of course, losing him was hard, but there's no use dwelling on it. I have to be strong for this child. Saying so, she laughed again and patted my back. It hurt, but somehow it was fun. Are Grandpa and Grandma well? They're fine. You should all come visit sometime. It's been years since you last came, hasn't it? Yeah. My face clouded over again at those words. Ever since they started focusing on John's education, I haven't gone out with my parents. Family trips were always the three of them without me. I was always left alone. I wonder how many years it's been since I had a fun conversation with relatives. Is something wrong? No, it's nothing. I shook my head and forced a smile, but Harper looked at me questioningly. In a hurry, I said, "Hey, look at this." I showed Harper the test that was returned to me today. Wow, you scored 95. That's amazing. You're so much better than me, Isabella. Surprised by the score, Harper patted my head. I can't remember the last time someone patted my head. I never had such a memory with my parents. Pleased, I beamed with joy. Go home and show it to your mom and dad. They'll praise you. Really? Yeah. I was on my way to see everyone since I'm here. Let's go together. Okay. Lately, going home had been depressing, but thanks to the cheerful Harper, I felt a bit better. Maybe today, Mom will praise me, maybe even pat my head. This is just trash. But my hopes were crushed. As usual, Mom crumpled my test and threw it into the trash can. Hey, that's not right. Seeing this, Harper was surprised and scolded my mom, but don't meddle in other families' parenting. Mom glared at Harper and continued. Forget about the test. What's up with you? Aren't you ashamed of being a mother without the father for your child around? Even as a grade schooler, I thought that was too much. Harper didn't choose to raise her child alone. After losing the person she loved, she's overcoming grief. My mom, who knows nothing, shouldn't say such things. Suddenly, the front door opened. Look, if it isn't Harper. Dad came home. And behind him was John. It seemed Dad was about to drive John to his extracurricular activities. It's been a while. You're home early. What about work? Shut up. It's none of your business. Times are tough. Are you okay with that? Jokingly said Harper. Dad grinned unpleasantly. I have John, a fine insurance policy. If he succeeds in the future, we'll be rich instantly. Our retirement is secure. When Dad said that, Harper looked at him uninterestedly. You should find a competent man and get married yourself. No thanks. I'll continue to love him. Plus, I have this child now. Why not just give up the child already? The moment Dad said something so awful casually, Harper's demeanor changed dramatically. What? She glared at Dad with a terrifying expression. Dad was clearly flustered by her intensity. You know, Dad. Feeling the tension, I tried to lighten the mood and spoke to Dad. What? As always, Dad responded gruffly. He hasn't smiled at me in a long time, and he hardly ever looks me in the eye anymore. I hesitantly offered my test. Today, I got 95 on a test. Dad glanced at the test and took it. I was hopeful he might praise me. But Dad was just like Mom. Not even worth looking, he said, throwing the test on the floor. And then, as if to finish it off, he stepped on it. A child who can't score perfect is no child of mine. The test was torn to shreds under his foot. Shocked at this, Mom added even more insult. He's right. You're not our child. Being with someone so untalented is annoying. If only I could get rid of you. Why? Why are they so cold? I'm for sure their child. Could they only the one who's excellent? So does that mean they didn't want me in the first place? I was crying in silence when Dad said, You're so annoying. Glaring at me. You're not cute at all. Mom spat out. Are you really my sister? Even John laughed and said so. I don't want to live in this house anymore. I blurted out. Then leave if you can live on your own. Mom sneered. A grade schooler like me couldn't possibly survive on my own. This hell was far from over. Thinking this, I felt more and more tears well up. It was when I felt like a hole had opened up at my feet. Suddenly, something warm was placed on my head. At that moment, I opened my eyes and looked up. There was Harper, with a bright and warm smile. Harper? I hear you. Then you should come to my place. What? Hey, you guys don't want Isabella, right? Harper asked Dad, standing before me, who was in shock. What? Well, yeah. Dad nodded. Then, I'll take in Isabella. Harper also nodded. Is that okay, Isabella? Harper peered into my confused face. Her eyes were shining, and I could tell she meant it, even as a child. At that moment, tears welled up in my eyes again. Yeah. I want to live with Harper. All right, it's decided. In front of my stunned parents and John, Harper smiled brightly and patted my head again. Packing up my few belongings, I left the house with Harper. You better not come back. Mom said. I won't let her come back. Harper said, sticking out her tongue. Her childishness made me laugh unintentionally. I was concerned about the baby. Is the baby okay? After all the noise, the baby had been quiet, and I asked worriedly. Harper peeked at the baby in her chest and said, He's been sleeping the whole time. This kid's going to be a big deal, she said with a laugh. And so, I was taken in by Harper. I thought we'd go to my grandparents' house, but it was different. There's no childcare center in the countryside. I moved to a place that's easier for raising kids, Harper said, leading me to the apartment where she currently lived. It's small, but bear with me. Don't worry, it's fine. Even though I lived in a detached house before, there was never a place for me there. This freedom now feels so much better. I don't mind transferring schools even right before graduation. I'm actually happy to go to a new place where no one knows my family situation. Since then, every day has been unbelievably fun. What? 90 again? Amazing, Isabella. Harper always praised me. Cooking didn't go well today? Don't worry about it. Everyone makes mistakes. She would cheer me up, asking if I was okay. Isabella, thank you for always helping around the house and taking care of the child. She expresses her gratitude to me. But you should prioritize yourself. You're still a child, and if you're in trouble, you should rely on adults. She always gives me a smile. Harper showed me more profound affection than my parents ever did. The grandparents I occasionally meet also spoil me. Thanks to them, I've completely recovered and grown into a fine person. And before I knew it, 20 years had passed. Now in my 30s, my parents are standing before me. I was contacted by my grandparents, who said my parents wanted to see me. What do they want now? Since being taken in by Harper until today, they've never cared or contacted me. Why did they want to see me all of a sudden? What is it? All of a sudden? I say coldly, but my parents give a sleazy smile. After 20 years, my parents have aged. And they seemed excessively worn out, with more wrinkles and white hair than one would expect. My mom, in her 60s, looks almost as old as my grandparents in their 80s. Don't be so cold. We have a lot to talk about. Shall we order something? We're in a cafe. In front of us is the coffee I ordered. For some reason, my parents only ordered water. I forgot my wallet today. Could you cover the coffee? Forgetting their wallet? How did they manage the transportation here? Their obvious lie makes me sigh. I'm not in the mood to eat. If you have something to say it quickly. I see. My parents look disappointed. Watching them warily, they give me a sleazy smile again. Isabella, won't you live with us? What? I heard you've become a lawyer. Dad says, his face lighting up. That's true. Yes, I became a lawyer after intense studying. Originally self-taught and scoring high grades, Harper hired a tutor for me, and soon my grades were at the top. I decided to become a lawyer, passed the difficult entrance exams for a prestigious university law department. And after overcoming various challenges, including graduate school and the bar exam, here I am. I knew you could do it. I'm proud to be your parent. You were excellent after all. Dad's words are infuriating. What are you talking about now? After all the times you called me useless? Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes? Including oppressing me? That was for your own good. Unable to stand it, I ended up throwing water in Dad's face. I'm your dad. Why would you do that? Be thankful I didn't throw coffee. I spared you only to avoid trouble in the cafe, or else I would have. What did you say? Dad's demeanor changes completely. I've had enough. I thought we could have a calm and kind conversation, but there's no need for that with you. It seems Dad was trying to butter me up, but quickly showed his true colors. Sitting beside him was Mom, agreeing with him. That's right. You should support us. Why should I do that? It's a child's duty to take care of their parents. What? I frown deeply, and Dad's face turns even more red. What about John? The genius child you doted on? You said he'd take care of you when he succeeds. He's useless. Dad says dismissively at my words. He was fine until university, but then job hunting didn't go great for him and he shut himself in his room. That's tough. Apparently, the genius John was good at studying but failed elsewhere. He would pass written job interviews but was rejected at every face-to-face interview. Even the company that hired him, citing a lack of fit, let him go in less than 6 months. After failing to secure another job, he remained unemployed. Now, at 35, he's still jobless and holed up in his room. I can somewhat understand. Always pampered by our parents and following their instructions, John never learned to think for himself. He also never played with friends, so he likely couldn't build good interpersonal relationships. The inevitable outcome for someone who could only study. So, we 3 want you to live with us and support us. I refuse. What did you say? Didn't you hear? Let me say it again, I refuse. I said it louder the second time, and my parents became furious, their faces turning red. I worked hard to become a lawyer, but I never managed to score perfect on a test. What? Dad looked confused at what I was saying, so I continued. Dad, remember what you said? Oh yes, a child who can't score perfect is no child of mine. So, by that logic, I'm not your daughter. That's in the past. It's not just in the past. To me, it feels like it happened yesterday. I've suffered from those words for a very long time. Don't dismiss my suffering as something from the past. I spoke coldly, leaving my parents in despair. Besides, I already have a real family. What? Mom tilted her head at that moment. Sorry to keep you waiting, Isabella. A voice called from behind, and I turned around. Ryan, thank you for looking after the kids. It's no problem. Are you done talking? Yes, we're done. Let's go home. The man who appeared was a man of my age. I nodded with a smile and stood up. My parents hurriedly tried to stop me. Wait a minute. Who is this? To that, the man bowed his head. Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan, Isabella's husband. Husband? You're married? It seems my grandparents hadn't told my parents about this. Well, I had asked them not to. Of course I am. I'm 32. What about the wedding? We had one. You should have invited us, your parents. I did. We weren't invited. My mom insisted they weren't invited. But I repeated myself again. Yes, I did. I invited my dear and beloved mom. Confused by what I was saying, my parents looked to where I pointed. What? That's my mom. Mom? That's Harper? Dad shouted as he saw Harper, who had taken me in and raised me, smiling and waving. In her hand was a baby stroller. By the way, that's Harper's son, David. Beside Harper stood a fully grown David. And the young girl David is holding hands with is my child. What? And of course, the baby in the stroller is also mine. What? My parents' cries of shock didn't stop at the continuous revelations. I smiled at my astonished parents. Thank you, Dad, Mom, for abandoning me. Huh? To my stunned parents, I continued. Thank you for leaving me with Harper. Thanks to that, I received all the love I needed and grew up properly. I became a lawyer, met the person I love, and got married. All of this is because you abandoned me. What? Don't ever appear in front of me again. But, to my bewildered parents, I gave a cold smile. If you show up again, you know what will happen, right? Everything you did to me in the past, I'll sue you for. And if you do anything that I deem as harassment, I won't hesitate to sue you. Just remember what will happen if you appear before me. What will happen? Remember this well. With that, I grabbed the water in front of my mom and poured it over their heads. Enjoy your life with John, who's unemployed and holed up in his room. I waved and walked away, leaving my parents without a word. Later, through my grandparents and acquaintances, I learned that my parents sold the house and disappeared somewhere with John. Apparently, after retiring in their 50s due to the recession and receiving little severance pay, Dad quickly ran out of money and faced financial difficulties. Even when they told John to work, he would throw tantrums, making it impossible to reason with him. Even if they receive an old age pension in the future, the amount will be minimal. John's education consumed all their resources, and my parents ended up with no savings. They've reached the point where they're struggling even for daily meals and came crying to me for help. After being turned away by me, my parents sought financial assistance from my grandparents and other relatives, but being known as parents who abandoned their daughter, no one was willing to help them. Their last resort was to sell the old house, securing some money for their immediate living expenses. After that, no one knows where the three of them went. I feel sorry for John. He could have escaped from those parents if he really wanted to. His failure to do so might be his own responsibility. I'm willing to help him if he ever reaches out, but I don't know about my parents. As for me, I'm living happily surrounded by Ryan and our children. I try to shower all our children with equal love, regardless of who's more talented. Harper, who is aged but still looks young, watches over us with joy. I'll repay you for everything, Mom, I say, to which Harper responds with the same bright and cheerful smile she's always had. Isabella, you're nothing but perfect, my pride and joy, she says as she pats my head. Hey, where are you going at this time? As soon as James saw the incoming call on his cell phone, he stopped eating and went back to his room, grabbing his coat to head out. It was supposed to be a rare family time together. No, I just got a call from Mom saying she fell at home and can't move, so I need to help her. I'm taking her to the night clinic now. Don't worry about anything, you too. With that, James rushed out of the house. I just watched him leave as usual, but he has been totally indifferent to Betty so far. And yet, now he's suddenly concerned about Betty. And that phone call, I only saw it for a moment, but the caller ID seemed to be set to private. It doesn't make sense to have your own mother's number on private. His behavior just now raised my suspicions all at once. A few minutes after James left, the doorbell suddenly rang. Elizabeth, good evening. I heard you were feeling under the weather, so I made some stew and brought it over. What's going on here? Opening the door, there stood Betty, who was supposed to be unable to move after falling, holding a pot in both hands. Betty! Just now, James left saying you had fallen and couldn't move. That's when I was certain. James had lied about Betty being immobile and even trampled on our family time to go somewhere. My name is Elizabeth. Currently, I live with my husband James and our elementary school son Mark, just the three of us. Life hasn't been easy with the recent rise in prices, but we're a close-knit family of three. We met in college. I happened to stop by a cafe where James was working as a waiter. Being shy, I was so nervous about his good looks that I couldn't speak properly as a customer, a memory I still recall. Was this love at first sight? As someone who had never believed in love at first sight, thinking it was more of a superstition, I became confused about what to do. I asked for advice from a high school friend who was experienced in love. Why don't you just talk to him if you're interested? Otherwise, nothing will start, right? Through high school, I only had 2 boyfriends, so what my friend was suggesting seemed like a big challenge. Yeah, I get that, but, I'm shy, and I get even more nervous around him. I just can't bring myself to speak. After about 10 minutes of thinking, we decided that if I couldn't do it alone, we'd go together. So, after university classes, we headed to the cafe where he was likely to be. When we arrived, I saw him at the register. "Now's your chance to talk to him," my friend encouraged me as we joined the line to order. Finally, it was my turn. As I approached him, my heart raced even more. He prompted me to order, and I finally spoke up. I'd like a cafe latte, please. And, would you like to be friends with me?" The first words I managed to muster came out louder than I could control, audible to other customers in line at the cafe. Embarrassed by being overheard, my shyness kicked in, and my face turned beet red. I hastily passed my order and payment to my friend and dashed out of the cafe. I thought it was over. But my boldness turned out to be a good thing. My friend followed me out, and to my surprise, he followed her. It seemed he was curious about my behavior at the cafe, and since he was on his break, he came after us. I managed to exchange contact information with him, and after hanging out as friends for 6 months, I confessed my feelings. He had developed feelings for me too, and we started dating. After years of dating and living together, we decided to get married. Our son Mark was born, and though life is hectic with childcare and housework, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's amazing how the fatigue doesn't matter when you're working for your family. I never thought marriage was for me, but once I had a family, my perspective changed completely. However, there's been one major concern in our marriage. Recently, James has been coming home unusually late. Before, he would let me know when he was leaving work, saying, "I'm heading home now." But lately, there's been no such communication, and coming home in the morning has become the norm. He's never worn cologne before, but sometimes he comes home covered in a sweet scent. I confronted James about it, but he always brushes it off, saying he's tired from work or that it's just business entertainment. I knew I needed to face the truth. But thinking about my family, especially Mark, I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. The only person I could talk to about this was my mother-in-law, Betty. Despite our age difference, we clicked at a family meeting and have been close ever since, more like friends than in-laws. Betty has always been there for me, listening to my struggles with housework and parenting, always taking my side. But this time, I hesitated to talk to her, fearing it might worry her or add to her stress. A few years ago, during a visit, Betty fell ill. It wasn't serious, but given her age, she couldn't lead the same life as before. When I told James that Betty was unwell, he didn't show any concern and returned the next evening, reeking of perfume, saying he couldn't leave work. I was so angry I was nearly at my breaking point. But Betty, ever calm, simply soothed my anger without a word of complaint. Since Betty's hospitalization and return, I've been helping her with household chores and going shopping together. At first, she seemed guilty for accepting my help, but she warmed up when I told her I wanted to assist. "Elizabeth, thank you so much. You make every day enjoyable for me." "No, thank you. I've learned so much from you, Betty. I enjoy our talks too." Betty's simple "thank you" means so much to me, someone who rarely receives gratitude. I've resolved to protect Betty. And it was on one such evening. Today, James came home early for a change, and we were going to have dinner as a family for the first time in a while. When James texted that he was leaving work on time, I was so happy I decided to make an extra dish to celebrate, rummaging through the fridge and cooking with joy. Mark, doing his homework in the living room, noticed my good mood and asked, "Mom, what's up? You seem happy." "Oh? Does it show?" "Well, James is coming home early for once. I'm happy we can have a family dinner together." Mark's response was lukewarm, perhaps due to his age, but I'm sure he was happy inside. I watched his back as he returned to his homework, and I continued cooking. About 30 minutes later, James came home, and we sat down for a rare family dinner. I made hamburgers at Mark's request and prepared some snacks for James, laying them out on the table. We talked about school, recent events, and other family matters as we ate. Mark, initially aloof, warmed up as the meal progressed, even chatting with James. Family meals like this are so enjoyable. Even if James comes home late, smelling of sweet perfume, moments like this make the bad feelings fade away. I'm realizing that all over again. As we were finishing dinner, James's mobile phone rang, interrupting our family conversation. He glanced at his phone, suddenly stopped eating, and went to his room to grab his coat, as if he was about to leave somewhere. "Hey, where are you going at this time?"
"No, I just got a call saying Mom has fallen at home and can't move, so I'm taking her to the night clinic. Don't worry about a thing, both of you."
James said that and left the house in a hurry. I watched him go, even though he never showed any interest in Betty before. It was strange that he suddenly seemed concerned about her. And about that call, I only caught a glimpse, but it looked like the caller ID was set to private. It's odd to have your own mother's number set as private. I was just feeling good about our family time, but his actions raised suspicions. Then, the doorbell rang. "Elizabeth, good evening. I heard you were feeling ill, so I brought some stew. What's going on here?" To my surprise, Betty, who was supposed to be unable to move, stood at the door holding a pot.
Betty! James just left saying you had fallen and couldn't move."
I invited Betty in to compare our stories. According to her, James told her not to come near our house, claiming I was ill and resting. She tried to contact him several times to check on me, but he either dodged the questions or assured her that everything was fine, seemingly trying to keep us apart. Now, I was certain. James lied about Betty being immobile and even trampled on our family time to see someone else. I reached my limit and activated a GPS device I had previously installed in the car for emergencies. According to the GPS, James was heading downtown, likely towards the hotel district. Betty peered over my shoulder at my phone, watching James's GPS movements. "If you want to divorce James, I'll support you. I'm on your side, Elizabeth." Her words lifted a weight off my shoulders. Empowered by Betty's support, I decided to confront James. The GPS showed his location stopped right in front of a hotel, seemingly confirming his infidelity. However, GPS location information isn't always absolute. It's possible that it's slightly off, and he might not be at the hotel. To confirm his whereabouts, I tried calling James, but after a few rings, the call was disconnected without an answer, and when I tried again, the phone was turned off. Although I had some hope when making the call, there's nothing I can do if his phone is off. Let's leave it for now. We'll talk to James when he comes home tomorrow. With that, I ended the day quietly with Mark and Betty. The next morning, before waking up Mark, I checked the living room to see if James had returned, but he hadn't. The quiet living room, lit only by the morning sun through the curtains, was empty. He didn't come back. It's really over, isn't it? As noon approached, James finally returned, still in the same clothes as when he left. "Welcome back, James. We need to talk." "What?" "I'm tired from taking Mom to the night clinic and staying with her. Can we talk later?" James scratched his head and sighed, attempting to head to his room. But Betty appeared behind me and blocked his way. "You said you were taking your mother to the clinic because she couldn't move? Explain exactly what you mean by that." James's face, which had been calm, suddenly turned pale. Understandably so. He was supposed to have rushed out last night to help his mother, yet here she was, healthy and with me. Unable to say anything, James quietly followed us to the living room, where he saw my parents, who I had called earlier. Realizing the situation, he sat down without being asked and prepared himself to listen. "James, you know why we are all gathered here. Tell us the reason yourself." Under Betty's intense questioning, James, sweating profusely, hung his head in silence. "If you won't talk, I will. Last night, you said you were taking Betty to the night clinic because she was injured. But actually, you were in the hotel district, weren't you?"
and I didn't fall or get hurt. You also kept me away from the house, saying Elizabeth was ill. You didn't want me coming over because it was inconvenient, right?
I pulled out my mobile phone and showed the evidence that the last GPS location was a hotel. James was shocked to realize that his location was being shared with me. It had been easy to track James. I've been busy with childcare and housework, and out of good conscience, this was the first time I activated the app because of this incident. James looked at me, wanting to ask how I installed the app, but given the situation, he couldn't bring it up. That makes sense. If he questioned me about it, it would be like admitting he was in a suspicious place. If he doesn't say anything, no matter the evidence, the truth won't be fully revealed. He probably calculated it that way. But Betty and I wouldn't let that strategy work. We were determined to uncover the truth.
James, would you care to explain? No, this is...
Just then, James's phone vibrated with a notification. Seeing his expression cloud over, I quickly grabbed the phone and saw a message from a woman saying, "You forgot something." Attached was a photo of a young woman, probably in her 20s, holding James's coin case.
Who is this young lady? You're not going to say something transparent like she's a junior at work, are you?
James's face turned from pale to white, not expecting such definitive proof from his affair partner. James had been silent, trying to hide the truth, but now there was no escape.
James, call this woman right now. And make sure she explains everything.
Betty's tone was unlike anything I had heard from her before. The words Betty hurled at James were immensely heavy. I got goosebumps from the sheer intensity of it. James, without any resistance to that overpowering presence, obediently called the other woman, putting her on speakerphone so that everyone present could hear the conversation. The woman, named Lisa, sounded like she was in her early 20s, a typical modern girl. Was she really James's type?
You were with James yesterday, weren't you? Did you know he's married, or did you meet him unaware of his marital status?
Yes, I knew. James told me himself.
He's always complaining about his personal life every time we meet at the hotel. Honestly, listening to him has been exhausting. So, you knew he was married, met him at the hotel, and even called him to the hotel district yesterday?
Well, yes, I called him, but he was the one who forgot about the hotel reservation we had. So I just wanted to know what he planned to do about it. This meant that James left the house last night because he received a call about an appointment he had forgotten. He chose his affair over family time. The James who used to be kind and cared about his family had changed somehow after marrying me and the birth of Mark. It was more of a feeling of emptiness than sadness or anger. Mom looked puzzled, and Dad seemed ready to punch James any moment.
In truth, I've been aware of James's womanizing for a while now. I kept silent because I didn't want to worry everyone. I thought about divorce, but I didn't want Mark to suffer with a single mother. So that's why you seemed down when you visited me.
Did it show on my face?
Not exactly, but I'm a mother too, Elizabeth, and we've known each other for a long time.
I just had a feeling you were troubled. I thought I was suppressing these feelings to avoid burdening anyone, but maybe deep down, I was silently crying for help, wanting someone to notice. But now, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I've opened up about my feelings, and everyone understands. It's all been cleared away.
I can't be with someone like you anymore, who has a bad track record with women and doesn't care about his family. I want a divorce.
Finally, I was able to voice my feelings to James. Then, James, who had been silent, finally spoke up with a sigh.
It's actually your fault, you know? Before we got married, you were all womanly, but after we got married, you lost all your charm. That's why I'm having fun with young, cute girls like Lisa. What's wrong with that?
His brazen defiance and unjustified blame-shifting made my anger boil. The audacity of his claims was infuriating. Certainly, since Mark was born, I've been so busy with housework and childcare that I hardly had any time or energy for myself. But I did it because I believed family happiness was important. I was content not spending time or money on myself if it meant my family could live happily. This man trampled on all those feelings and got caught up with a young girl, putting his family second, if not completely out of his mind. Probably, James thinks that providing money for the house is enough.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to be a mother? I gave up everything to raise you, doing housework and childcare. James, you really are a hopeless man. James, that's too much. You've gone too far.
Despite the severe criticism from everyone, James, who had completely defiant, showed no damage, leaning back in his chair and fiddling with his mobile phone. There was no sign of remorse. No, even if he did feel remorse, it wouldn't make a difference now, but you'd think our words would at least resonate with him a little. However, there was no sign of that in James. The conversation that started in the afternoon continued for hours, and Mark came home from school.
I'm home. Oh, why is everyone here?
Hey Mark. Welcome back. Listen to this. Mark gave James, who clung to him, a cold look. Please don't touch me. I can't think of a person who meets other women outside and neglects our family and hurts Mom as my dad. Mark, despite his young age, seemed to understand everything. Everyone was surprised by his words. We never mentioned James's infidelity to anyone, let alone within the family. In fact, we never even discussed James's womanizing behavior. But somehow, Mark knew about James's affairs.
Mark, are you going to abandon me too? Who raised you and bought you everything you wanted? It was me, right?
No, Mom raised me. She made meals even when she was busy. Sure, the money was yours, but everything I wanted was bought by Mom.
That's thanks to me, isn't it? Who do you think allows you to live in this house and have a comfortable life? It's all because of my hard work. Show some gratitude.
At James's words, show some gratitude. I found myself moving unconsciously, and before I knew it, I had slapped James across the face with force.
How dare you say show some gratitude? Do you know how much I've struggled, keeping our finances in order for our future, cleaning the lipstick off your suit collars? Suit collars? You can't mean.
I fetched a shirt from the laundry basket and threw it at James, now collapsed on the floor.
Do you know? Lipstick on a shirt comes off when you gently hand wash it in warm water and then apply detergent directly to the stain. I learned that to clean up after your affairs. Have you ever thought about how I felt doing that? Of course, you haven't.
After my outburst, I suddenly caught my breath. On the floor lay James, holding his red and swollen cheek, looking up at me. How much had I suffered for this man? By now, even you must understand, right? Divorce Elizabeth immediately. And as an apology for all the stress you've caused, vow never to contact her, me, or us ever again.
Don't come near Mom, me, or even Grandpa and Grandma anymore. You've never been, and certainly aren't now, my dad. Just get out.
With Mark also abandoning him, James, who thought he had an ally in his son, lost his place. I demanded a divorce and compensation, declaring that he would never get custody of Mark. My parents refused any further contact with James and deleted his information, while Betty, even though he was her only son, decided to cut ties right there. James, rejected by everyone, left the house without much resistance, walking towards the bustling streets under the evening sky. Later, I learned that Lisa, his affair partner, was also married and facing a hefty compensation claim from her husband. It seemed unlikely that young Lisa could afford it, but that was her problem. James signed the divorce papers without hesitation and agreed to pay alimony and child support until Mark graduated from high school. But this drastically changed his comfortable, somewhat extravagant lifestyle. Now living in an old apartment on the outskirts of town, he struggles financially. Mainly because he never learned to cook and resorts to fast food and instant noodles. All of this is a result of James's own actions, his fault. I decided to move back to my parents' house in Dallas with Mark. Though it meant changing schools for personal reasons, Mark agreed without complaint, which was a relief. Mark's friends looked a bit sad, but Mark, having matured a bit through this incident, comforted them, saying, "I'll definitely come to visit." Despite being the one transferring, I am proud of how strong my son has grown. Betty and I remained close even after the divorce. Despite initially refusing, I accepted some financial help from her, as she insisted on supporting us due to her son's actions. This helped us avoid financial difficulties. Now, we sometimes have dinner together, and Betty even sends gifts for Mark's birthday. Mark seems happy, surrounded by many people. With my parents helping out on weekdays, I've returned to my pre-marriage pharmacy job and am enjoying fulfilling workdays. Now when I come home, Mark and my parents welcome me. Surrounding the dinner table with my family is my happiest moment. They say relationships based solely on money end when the money runs out. That's exactly why we cut ties with my husband's family. It's been a decade since we made that decision. My kids, myself, and even my husband William have kept our distance from them. You see, William used to be all about visiting his family for any little reason, but even he got fed up with their constant antics. His parents, who live with his brother Aiden and his wife, both had long careers as full-time employees and retired with a decent pension and retirement benefits. And Aiden, working at a major company, certainly isn't short on cash. Despite that, whenever they invite us out for a family lunch, they never offer to pay. Worse still, they always find some excuse to make us foot the bill for various things. They'd ask us to order something online because they couldn't figure out how to do it, or to pick up groceries like salt, sugar, and other condiments because they'd run out. For instance, they insisted on a specific brand of steak sauce from a particular store, or a certain toilet paper brand. Nothing else would do. There was a time I bought a different brand, and they dramatically sighed, saying it wasn't right, and insisted we take it back home because they apparently still had some. As annoying as that was, what irked me even more was that they never repaid any of the money for these advance purchases. Back then, being newly married, I didn't want to cause a fuss and just went along with their demands. Looking back, I really regret letting them take advantage of us like that. But you know, after over a year of this, anyone's patience would wear thin. I realized something had to change, so I finally brought up the money they owed us. Then, my mother-in-law Madison showed a surprised look and said,
"Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that."
I was relieved, thinking we'd finally get paid back, but she never seemed to intend to actually reimburse us. She just said it and left it at that. Despite our persistence, she made a clearly annoyed face and said, "It's just some condiments and household items, no big deal." When I kept insisting, she got frustrated and snapped,
"All right, I'll pay you. You're so persistent and annoying."
Then, she roughly opened her wallet and said, "Sorry, looks like I don't have enough right now. I'll pay you later," and closed her wallet without waiting for a response. I just felt a strong sense of disgust. I glanced at some bills in her wallet. She must have had plenty of money to pay back. I thought about explaining the situation to my father-in-law Lucas and asking him to repay us. But he always says he knows nothing about the household finances because Madison handles them, and he doesn't want to get involved. Aiden avoids talking to us altogether, and whenever we visit, he just leaves. Fed up, I vented to William and demanded repayment, to which he said, "It's just steak sauce and tissues, right? I'd get it if it was $1,000 or $2,000, but it's just small stuff. Don't get so worked up over little things. You'll get wrinkles." Furious, I threw all the receipts and the total amount at him, asking if he could still say the same. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was probably around $1,000. William couldn't believe it was that much and kept denying it. But you see, ever since I was young, my parents taught me to be very strict about managing money. They always said not to lend or borrow money, even from close friends. And if I must, I was to always note the amount, date, and reason. Besides, preparing a promissory note as well. So, I had kept detailed notes of everything I had fronted for his family. After I showed him the receipts and notes, explaining everything in detail, his initial anger turned to disbelief, then annoyance, asking why steak sauce had to be so expensive. I told him, if it was out of goodwill, I wouldn't be asking for the money back. But this money was for things they specifically asked for and promised to repay. Not paying it back is like defaulting on a cash loan. And why do they always ask us when they live with Aiden? It's just not right. You're not listening to me anymore, so I want you to deal with it. From now on, I don't want anything to do with this. I want to save money for us. He fell silent, then weakly said, "But my parents are relying on us. It'd be rude to turn them down, and we're not that close with Aiden and his family. Besides, we should help each other out in tough times, right?" I snapped.
That's something the person who received help should say. When have they ever helped us? They haven't, because they never have. I get you want to help your parents and feel needed, but I'm the one being sacrificed, not you. If you think using your wife to show filial piety is okay, you're very wrong. Enough is enough. If you insist, consider this repayment as severance money. From now on, if they ask for anything, it's on you. Use your own allowance, not the household budget. End of discussion.
And with that, I went straight to the bedroom and slept. I knew he was indecisive, but that was too much. Still, as long as he handles his family himself, I don't mind. Even with his flaws, he works hard and helps around the house, and without his family's interference, he's not a problem, so I haven't considered divorce. But if he ever uses our household funds without permission or makes me out to be the bad guy, I would have gone straight for divorce papers. Despite their continuous requests, I kept directing everything to William, telling his family to ask him instead. The in-laws were surprised by my sudden change in attitude, but as long as their needs were met, they seemed content. They started calling William directly for requests. It's frustrating that I'll never see the money we fronted again. But if just over $1,000 means no more involvement with his family, it's a small price to pay. William kept looking to me for help each time they contacted him, but I ignored it. He deserved it for not taking my concerns seriously. I thought it was just deserts. However, about 6 months after leaving everything to him, he finally admitted defeat. He came to me, nearly in tears, saying he couldn't deal with them anymore. Recently, they had asked him to pay for renovations to their house, and when he refused, they called him an ungrateful son and said they wished they hadn't had him. I was irked that we had always been there to help, and then he opened up about something he'd never told me before. "I've never said this before, but in my family, the eldest son is everything. Aiden is always praised, no matter what, while I've always been overlooked. Aiden would get whatever he wanted, but I only got hand-me-downs. He'd get game consoles, and I'd get, like a $10 gift card. So, when my parents started relying on me, I thought I was finally needed. But I guess I was just the spare kid all along. I wish I hadn't been born," he said, apologizing for all the trouble he caused me. I was surprised by his revelation, but I wished he had confided in me sooner. That way, he wouldn't have had to suffer so much. We decided to cut ties with his family and communicated our decision. Despite William's insistence that he couldn't handle it anymore and suggesting they rely on Aiden, the in-laws refused, not wanting to inconvenience him. It was as if they thought it was okay to burden us instead. But even when we said that, they wouldn't listen. If William couldn't help them, they would call me, and if I refused, they'd go back to him. If we turned off our phones, they would come to our house, banging on the door and the doorbell, creating a scene. If we pretended not to be home, they'd even call my workplace for a welfare check. During that time, I got in touch with my high school friend Sophia, and we met up. I shared with her the bizarre actions of William's family, which led to her feeling disgusted and then sympathizing with us. She suggested, "People like that don't realize how they're perceived. They probably think it's normal for children to help their parents. Why don't you try doing the same to them? Maybe then they'll back off." I was surprised by her unexpected advice, but after parting with Sophia, I immediately discussed it with William, and we devised a plan to visit his family over the weekend. Thinking we were there to give them money, his parents were in a good mood. However, we said,
actually, we've been affected by the economic downturn. Both of our salaries have been cut, and our bonuses are gone. Life is tough right now. We want children, but considering that, we're really short on funds. So, we were hoping for a little help. To start, we need salt, steak sauce, and oh, we're out of bread too. Here's a list of the specific brands we want.
And we handed them a list with high-end brands. They got angry, saying it was pathetic that we couldn't afford such basic things and that everything on the list was expensive. So, I said,
"But, Madison, you guys have asked us for similar things, right? Despite driving a luxury car and going on several trips a year. It's just salt and steak sauce, right? So it shouldn't be a problem, right?"
Realizing they had done the same thing to us, they started panicking, talking about their savings for retirement and how buying multiple items would be expensive.
We responded, "You've always told us, we should help each other out in tough times. We've been supporting you for nearly 2 years, so you can do the same, right? That's why we can't afford to pay for your renovations. We came over unexpectedly today, so we'll leave now, but please buy these items by tomorrow."
And we left the list with them before leaving their house. When the promised day arrived and we received no contact from William's family, I called to remind them. Madison complained about our seriousness and criticized us for lacking manners, so I retorted,
"Are you saying you were aware of your lack of manners while repeatedly urging us?"
Then she abruptly hung up. After several unsuccessful attempts to call back, William and I decided to visit his family after work. Madison, who hadn't expected us, let out a small scream upon seeing us. We forced our way in, declaring that we would stay until they prepared everything, which enraged Lucas. He told us not to say such pathetic things because it was shameful.
"Man, isn't that something you can't say, Dad? You've been mooching off us, and when we ask for help, you act like you don't know us. That's even more shameful. We're just doing the same thing you've been doing to us. If you call that shameful, then you're the same. And Dad, you can't keep saying you're not involved. You've seen Mom asking us for help. Even if Mom asked, if she hasn't paid, it's normal for you to cover it."
William argued. They both fell silent. They finally gave up and promised to have everything ready by the next visit, asking us to leave for the day. I emphasized our request firmly before we left. On the day of collection, all the items they had prepared were the cheapest brands from a supermarket. Even though I was okay with that, I let out an exaggerated sigh and said, "No, they are not what we asked for, is it? It's clearly written here. We don't need these then. We'll leave them here." And I left the items there. That night, they called William to complain, but when he pointed out that they had done the same, they hung up. After repeating it a few times, they seemed to be mentally exhausted. They had changed the locks of their house, so William started ringing the doorbell and shouting outside, pretending to be worried. When neighbors came out asking what was happening and William pretended to be concerned that they might have collapsed inside, the worried neighbors gathered, and the panicked in-laws eventually came out. Seeing them safe, William feigned relief, and that they were awkwardly praised by the neighbors. With the neighbors on our side, they finally gave in after just 3 months. They apologized for their rudeness and agreed to repay us, asking us to stop. I replied, "What are you talking about? It's only been 3 months. You're making it sound like we're crazy, but you were the ones banging on doors and calling my workplace. We'll bill you for the renovation costs in a year." After exchanging glances with William, they turned pale. They finally came to deeply apologize, asking us not to involve ourselves with them anymore, and handed over some money. They added a bit extra to the amount we had fronted. The bundle of bills was quite thick. Seeing the elderly couple trembling and pleading, we felt it was enough. Since they had declared disengagement, We told them we would never involve ourselves with them again and would not take care of them in their old age. And then William and I went home. Just 3 months. But it's still a big deal. It felt incredibly long. We didn't enjoy doing it, but if it was so effective, we should have tried it sooner. The unfamiliar effort took a toll on us, and after realizing we no longer had to deal with his family, all our strength left us, and we both ended up taking time off work due to ill health. I had never taken sick leave before, so my colleagues were surprised. When I returned and explained the battle with the in-laws, I received mixed reactions of disgust and admiration, with some saying my acting was too realistic and creepy. With the in-laws out of our lives, we finally restarted our life as a couple. Thanks to reduced stress, we joyfully discovered I was pregnant just a year after cutting ties. We celebrated, feeling that letting go of bad ties had brought good fortune. We didn't tell the in-laws about the birth, raised our child with help from my family, and despite the challenges of first-time parenting and some marital disputes, we managed to overcome them. Having successfully completed our strategy against them, we gained strange confidence that we would be okay. Later, when our first child was 3 years old, I became pregnant with our second, and eventually, we became parents of 3, leading a fulfilling life. We couldn't afford the luxury like the in-laws, but it was no problem compared to being mooched off by them. We didn't know about their situation for a while after cutting ties, but about 5 years later, we heard details from one of William's relatives. Lucas had been having an affair with a younger woman and squandering money on her. Aiden and his wife both were caught cheating, and the over 40 wife got pregnant with her lover's child. Aiden didn't get fired but was demoted with a significant salary cut, and his wife eventually chose her lover and ran away, leaving only divorce papers behind. It sounded like something out of drama series, but it turned out to be true. Neighbors mentioned hearing them arguing constantly, and Madison, venting to the neighborhood, had told them everything. So, I shared our past experiences with the in-laws with the neighbors, who expressed clear disgust. I accidentally mentioned it to a gossip-loving neighbor, and it seems that the story about why we cut ties with them spread throughout the neighborhood. Now, even years later, they are treated with more caution than necessary, with everyone thinking that family is crazy. Well, I just mentioned it without thinking, but I never promised not to tell others, and I only spoke the truth. Moreover, since they always flaunted their wealth and were disliked by relatives, those relatives now keep their distance, knowing that involvement with them leads to no good. The in-laws, somehow finding out we had a child, contacted us once, asking why we hadn't told them. I responded with maximum enthusiasm.
Oh. Are you going to buy us baby goods? Thank you so much. I'll send you a wish list later.
But suddenly the call was disconnected. They promised not to contact us, did they? Since then, there has been absolutely no contact from them, and it continues to this day. Our children have grown up. The eldest is now preparing for high school entrance. We've sometimes wondered if it's unfair to the kids not to know their paternal grandparents, but they seem fine, so we reassure ourselves that it's for the best. William ensures he doesn't repeat his family's mistakes and showers equal love on all our children. We've also agreed to be self-reliant in our old age and not to burden our children. While we used to be troubled by the issues with his family, now it seems like it might have been a good experience, in a way. Still, it's definitely not something we'd want to go through again.
You're replaceable. You're fired.
Elaine, the president's daughter, spat out at me. I had reached my breaking point. Without retorting to her words, I quietly accepted my dismissal. Understood. If I must leave, then so be it. Emotion had drained from me. I responded in a voice lacking any spirit.
Well, goodbye then.
She waved at me, her face brightening with relief. I started preparing to leave the company I had once been grateful for. Then, I shall resign. On my last day, I went to say goodbye to Elaine. It was already too late for her. Not only was I leaving, but I also decided to leave a parting gift for the company.
Would you reconsider your resignation?
Elaine asked me, tearfully. Ridiculous. She was the one who fired me. I am Bonnie, 40 years old. Living alone in urban, I'm single and have devoted my life to my job. My parents live in another state, quietly enjoying their retirement. Both my parents were salespeople, which probably influenced me. From a young age, I was good at negotiating and getting along with people, whether getting extra prizes from the candy store or winning over my classmates' mothers for fancy birthday gifts. I had always wanted to use my strengths in a sales career. Eventually, as an adult, I worked in various sales roles before joining this staffing agency through a mid-career hire. In this competitive industry, our small company struggled to sustain profits without contracts from large corporations. Amidst that, I was always the top in new contracts, labeled as the company's promising newcomer, which became my confidence and success. However, I also faced persistent harassment from Elaine, the president's daughter. She had once been in sales and enjoyed popularity as the president's daughter, but now, working in administration, she seemed to take her lack of fulfillment out on me with relentless jealousy-driven harassment. I'm off now. I would routinely report before leaving the office to visit clients. That day, I had a packed schedule with client appointments, so I quickly finished lunch with coffee at the office before heading out.
Bonnie, if you use the hot water from the pot for your coffee, at least refill it before you leave.
Elaine chided me.
Sorry, I'm in a rush. Could you top it up for me?
She asked as she came to refill the water boiler, part of her administrative duties. I hadn't used much water, and I made sure to use it before everyone's lunchtime, so there was still plenty left.
Honestly, everyone complains that there's always less water after you use it.
She griped.
Really? I don't use much, but I'll be more careful.
I replied. With an appointment waiting, I couldn't linger and quickly left the office. During a meeting with a client, an email was sent to all employees from Elaine. It read, "To all staff, for the pleasant use of communal resources, please adhere to the rules. Recently, some inconsiderate employee has been using a lot of the pot's water without refilling it. Although it's just one person, we ask everyone to use the company's resources responsibly." I thought, this is about me, isn't it? The email implied it was just one person, so if a witch hunt started at the office, Elaine would surely point fingers at me. Ridiculous. I still remember her poor attitude from my first greeting at the company. She must be really bored to bother with such petty harassment. I had no choice but to get used to her antics. After finishing the day's appointments, I returned to the office to submit my end-of-day report. It was past 7 p.m. Usually, no one is around at the headquarters at this time, but Elaine was still there.
Oh, Elaine, you're still here?
Wow, Bonnie, you were still working? She asked, clearly surprised as I approached.
Sorry to startle you.
Yes, I'm surprised. Were you really working this late, or were you out drinking?
I wasn't drinking. It just got late because I had many places to visit.
What I wanted to ask was why she was still at the office at this hour. But I couldn't say that. After all, being the president's daughter, she had a habit of bullying others by exploiting their weaknesses.
I'm heading home now, Elaine. Don't stay too late yourself.
Just go home already. Sigh, another day drained by unnecessary issues. But something was bothering me. I couldn't help but wonder why Elaine was staying so late, and why she got puzzled as I spoke to her.
Bonnie, can I talk to you for a moment?
Elaine asked.
What is it?
I replied.
It's almost the end of the month, right? I need to check something about the new client acquisitions.
She said,
Okay. I'll be back at the office by 5 p.m.
The next day, as I came to the office as usual, what Elaine had mentioned felt unnatural. Why would an admin staff be concerned about the sales department's client numbers? That's typically the responsibility of the sales manager, not admin. The day was packed with appointments again. A company I regularly visit wanted to start a new project and needed staff, so they asked our company for assistance, resulting in another new contract for me. That client is a major call center expanding rapidly, and my strong relationship with their representative means they contact me whenever they need staffing support. Back at the office, after reporting the new contract to my boss, I went to meet Elaine, who had been waiting.
I'm back. You mentioned something about a client this morning. What's up? I asked. Bonnie, are you securing these new contracts by forming deep relationships with the clients?
She inquired. What? I was taken aback by her unexpected question. No, of course not. I stammered. Is that so?
Well, if that's the case, then it's fine.
Is that all?
Yes, that's it.
She replied. It felt weird. She waited all this time just to ask me that? While I was out working hard, she seemed to have nothing better to do. I don't feel comfortable about your question. Is something wrong? I asked. Nothing's wrong. She said, her expression mocking. Then why ask such a thing?
I find it strange. Someone like you getting so many clients.
She said. To me, it wasn't strange at all. It was due to my effort and expertise. What do you mean by someone like me? I asked.
You don't seem like the sales type. I mean, with my looks and privileged background, I fit the sales role, but you don't, Bonnie.
She implied. Sure, Elaine was attractive and had the president as her parent, seemingly living a charmed life. However, that's not what makes someone good at sales. Are you suggesting that because of my looks, I'm getting clients through personal relationships? I questioned.
I didn't say that directly.
She laughed. Feeling personally attacked, I left the office, passing by the laughing Elaine. I was so upset, I cried all the way home. As the month end approached, it was time to report this month's new client acquisitions and progress. Today was the day for that meeting. I had worked hard this month. With referrals from a major company and new clients met through acquaintances, I had secured 3 contracts, feeling very satisfied with my performance. Some months are dry, but this month, I felt proud of my achievements.
This month I've acquired 3 new clients, bringing my total to 12.
It was my turn to report my performance, so I shared as usual. But then the room started buzzing.
What's going on?
I whispered to my colleague David, sitting next to me. He is a friendly guy I've been close with since we started together, and quietly filled me in.
The documents say something different. What?
I checked my papers and they matched what I had just reported. However, his copy showed my new client count as 0, with a note saying there were issues with my sales acquisition methods under investigation.
What's this? Let's talk about it later. We should continue the meeting.
David advised, so I followed his lead and got through the meeting. I asked him for more details afterwards.
Why were my documents different from everyone else's?
Elaine prepared them, so I'm not sure. At that point, I understood. It was harassment from her.
Elaine prepared them, I see.
I took the documents David had and went to confront Elaine. Elaine, I need to talk to you.
What's up? Don't look so scary.
She said, this document, what is it? It's false, right? This is too much, even for harassment. I found myself raising my voice at her without realizing it. I was that angry. Then she said something shocking.
Bonnie, do you know what happens when you talk to me like that?
What?
You're replaceable. You're fired.
She spat out. I felt myself crumbling, exhaustion washing over me. After a heated argument, I found myself saying, understood. I'll leave, then. The intense argument in the office had made me the talk of the company. Despite contributing so much, why was I facing this? But I had said I would leave. What about my living expenses starting tomorrow? That thought drained all my motivation. Deeply upset, I got a call from David, who was worried about me.
I didn't realize it was that serious, sorry. I couldn't back you up as your colleague. It's okay. Elaine's harassment has been ongoing since I joined. Still, the company will take a big hit losing someone with your clientele. Are you really quitting?
His words made me reconsider. But the opponent wasn't just any employee. She was the president's daughter, with considerable influence.
I guess so. I'm confident in my sales record, and I'll do sales at another company.
That's all I have. I see. But here's a personal piece of advice: don't just quit. If you're leaving anyway, why not pay her back? She's not that great, even if she's the president's daughter. Hearing that, I thought, maybe he's right. Being a competitive person, I couldn't just leave after all the harassment from Elaine, as he suggested. I thought about what kind of payback I could give during my remaining time before resigning. I also decided to start looking for a new job.
Thanks, David. Your words sparked a great idea. Plus, I'm going to start job hunting.
I told him.
That's good to hear. Personally, I wish you'd stay, but if you're leaving, it might be fun to give Elaine a bit of trouble as a parting gift.
He said.
You might be right.
I mused. After hanging up with David, I dove into my job search and decided to use my remaining paid leave. I had a lot accumulated due to rarely taking time off. I went to Elaine to tell her about my plans. Elaine, thanks for deciding to fire me the other day. She seemed surprised by my attitude, probably expecting me to be depressed.
What's with that attitude?
She asked. Did you think I'd be down?
No, but you're tougher than I thought.
Yes, I am. By the way. I cut her off mid-sentence to tell her I'd be using my accrued leave.
Paid leave? I won't allow it. You should just leave quickly since you're fired.
Is she an idiot? She doesn't even realize the problem with her statement. Do you not know? You can't just fire someone easily, and you can't deny paid leave without a special reason.
Fine, take it then.
She relented easily. It wasn't as satisfying as I hoped, but I planned to use my leave to execute a great idea. Thank you. I'll come back to the office on my last day to say goodbye.
Why bother with that attitude? You don't need to come back.
I looked her in the eyes and gave her a sly smile.
Just wait and see, Elaine. You'll be in for a surprise.
I started to feel a bit excited. I then scheduled appointments to say goodbye to all our clients. I wasn't using my leave to rest, but to execute a plan that would lead to my next move. I decided to use all 30 days of my leave for this purpose and as payback to Elaine. I received regretful responses from many clients. When I explained my resignation to our biggest client, they were indignant.
If you leave, we'll end our dealings with your company and shift our business to wherever you go.
They said. I didn't need to be honest with clients, but I wanted them to stop dealing with my soon-to-be former company. That turned out to be more effective than I imagined, with all clients reacting the same way. I had to admit, it was a brilliant idea. Imagining Elaine's future distress made me feel quite relieved already. One day, while I was using my paid leave, Elaine called my cell phone.
Bonnie, all the clients you were handling are suddenly ending their contracts with us. Did something happen?
I don't know anything about that. I feigned ignorance. She probably didn't imagine I was contacting clients during my leave. She seemed too nonchalant.
It's strange. It's not like they would stop dealing with our company just because you left, right?
Well, I was just a representative. My leaving shouldn't influence our company's contracts that much.
I know that. But it's strange. One after another, they're ending the contracts. Probably due to the recession.
She mused. I almost laughed at how clueless she was. My plan was working. Then, I received a call from a top client. They wanted to discuss a possible headhunting offer. An unexpected development. I decided to meet with them. First, I called David. Since it was his idea that inspired me, I thought I should tell him.
Hey, how are you? I'm fine. But I have something to report.
What happened?
Remember our talk? I came up with a plan. If I'm quitting anyway, why not get back at Elaine?
He seemed almost to say, that sounds fun. As he eagerly listened to the story,
I explained everything to our clients, and they all said they'd move their contracts to wherever I go next.
Bonnie, you're incredible, a real sales pro.
I'm grateful, but I feel a bit guilty, yet impressed with myself. Thanks to you, David.
Though I knew it complicated things for him, who was still at the company, I vowed to repay his kindness somehow. As I completed informing all clients, I decided to accept the headhunting offer. That company was a major client of my soon-to-be former company, so their contract cancellation was a significant blow. The company that headhunted me was setting up a new subsidiary in staffing and wanted me to handle their sales. With my new job secured, my mission was complete. On my last day, I went to the office to say goodbye. I've appreciated working with you. Elaine seemed off.
That's the least of our problems.
What happened? Turns out, all the projects I managed were cancelled at the request of the clients. The company was facing issues due to a significant drop in revenue.
Dad's so angry with me. What do I do now?
She collapsed, crying. What to do? This happened because you decided to fire me, right? I looked down at the crying her and said,
I'm being blamed by Dad and the sales director. They're saying it's my fault Bonnie was fired and that I should fix the sales drop. But I can't do that.
She was crying like a child, but I was satisfied with the payback I had achieved. Elaine, remember how you said my appearance wasn't right for sales and that I secured deals through personal relationships? Maybe this is karma.
I'm sorry for that. I did reflect on it afterward.
Reflect? Too late for that. I didn't feel any reflection from you. And that's not all you did to me. Maybe you should try contacting the clients yourself to recover the sales. Though I doubt you can.
I can't do sales.
She used to be in sales. What is she talking about? Weren't you in sales before? Oh, I see. You were removed because you couldn't do the job? She just sat there, her face a mess with tears, unable to speak. I had nothing more to do there, so I decided to leave. Well, I'll be resigning now, Elaine.
Can't you reconsider your resignation? Our company's sales are in trouble.
No, thank you. Thus, I left the company I had worked at for years. According to David, after my resignation, Elaine was blamed for the negative impact on sales caused by firing me. That affected the employees' bonuses and led to complaints, resulting in her being forced out of the company. She's been now idle at home. I was enjoying success at the new company that headhunted me. One day, I heard from David that he too had left the company. I explained the situation to my new company and managed to get him hired. We were working together again, striving side by side. It was fun to work with a former colleague, and we were gradually securing contracts with the clients I used to deal with at my previous company. Thanks to it, I won a newcomer award this month and felt very fulfilled.
What is unconditional love? Have you ever thought about it? It's being loved just for existing, without having to do anything for someone else. Today, I want to share with you the great turnaround in my life. Abandoned by my biological parents and raised as an adopted child. My name is Shanae, and I am 32 years old. I was born weak and developed asthma at the age of 3, making me a child that requires extra care. My sister, 2 years older than me, is named Violetta. Fair-skinned, with big double eyelids and a straight nose. She had all 3 features of a beautiful face. For my parents, who had always dreamed of having a daughter become a network announcer, Violetta was the perfect child. In contrast with my plain, unremarkable face, I was the disappointment. Even as a child, I was aware of the difference in how our parents treated us. Because of my asthma attacks, I was only able to attend preschool in my final year. I envied Violetta, who was dressed in cute clothes and had her hair done by Mom every morning. While Violetta was at preschool, I played alone with dolls and drew pictures. Although Mom, a housewife, was always at home, I don't remember her ever playing with me. Maybe Violetta pitied me because of this.
Shanae, if you find this leaf, your cough will go away, and you'll get better. Yes, Shanae, now you're a princess too,
she said, gifting me a 4-leaf clover and a daisy chain crown. Believing Violetta's words, I sometimes sneaked out to the vacant lot nearby to find for 4-leaf clovers. One day, a big truck arrived and a piano was delivered to Violetta's room. Curious about the piano I was seeing for the first time, I intently watched Violetta play.
Do you want to try playing, Shanae?
Violetta asked me. Just as I was about to touch the keys. Hey, don't disturb Violetta! The piano is for her! I was scolded. Mom's face at that moment was scarier than the red ogre mask worn during the bean throwing festival. By the time I started elementary school, my sister was busy with many lessons: piano, English, ballet, and swimming. While Mom was preoccupied with Violetta's activities, I was tasked with household chores. Since you're always at home and probably bored, at least help around the house. Hearing this, I started doing chores like cleaning, laundry, and dishwashing. From 3rd grade, I even prepared meals for the family. Even on bitterly cold winter days when my hands would go numb. Use cold water. Hot water costs gas money. I remember blowing warm breath on my frostbitten red hands. That scene is still vivid in my mind. Beautiful and academically gifted, Violetta always scored 100 on her tests. Violetta, great job. Violetta, you're amazing. Seeing Violetta being praised and petted on the head by our parents made me envious. I wanted to be praised too.
Mom, look, I got 100 points too,
I said with a smile, presenting my test paper. But Mom looked at my face and said, Shanae, stop that unpleasant smile. You'll never match up to Violetta. What? I was shocked. Not only did I not get praised for scoring 100, but I was also scolded for my smile compared to Violetta. After that day, I stopped showing my test papers and forced smiles. Then, 2 months before my elementary school graduation, on February 5th, a day I'll never forget. Violetta was away at a ski camp, not home. Shanae, we're going to a restaurant today, Dad suddenly announced. I was surprised because they had never taken me out for a meal before. More curious than happy, I went to the restaurant where my grandparents were waiting. What's going on? Shanae, eat whatever you like today, Mom said kindly.
I'll have the kids' menu then,
I said modestly. The kids' menu? Is that all you want? My parents asked, looking puzzled. Don't hold back. Order something more expensive, they encouraged. Still, the kids' menu, something I had always longed for, tasted delicious, and my parents were kind. It was a long-awaited scene for me. Then suddenly Dad said seriously, Shanae, Violetta will be attending a school in the city starting next month, so Mom and Dad will go with her. What? I was speechless by the sudden news. Then Mom added, We really want to take you too, but with your asthma. And a nurse will take care of you. Uncle Percy and Aunt Jocelyn don't have children, and they want to take you in as their child, raised by your grandparents. Percy owns many companies, so you'll have a comfortable life. It's a good thing for you, Shanae. I was stunned. Aunt Jocelyn spoke to me gently, seeing me silent. Shanae, do you mind living with your grandparents? I couldn't find the words. It wasn't that I disliked Percy and Jocelyn. The aunt couple always cared for me, frail as I was. They were always kind and took care of me whenever my parents and Violetta were away. They cared about me more than my own parents. As I struggled to answer, Mom said, Shanae, you love the piano, right? I know you've been learning from Jocelyn recently, so we'll leave the piano for you. Become Jocelyn's child. After hearing Mom say that, I couldn't refuse. I wasn't being abandoned. I was becoming Jocelyn's child for a better life. I nodded slightly. After being taken in by the aunt couple, I lived a comfortable life, just as Mom said. Maybe you should take piano lessons seriously, Jocelyn suggested, and I started attending piano classes. From healthy eating to building physical strength, the aunt couple supported me, and by the time I graduated middle school, my asthma attacks had subsided, allowing me to lead a normal life. When I got accepted into one of California's top prep schools, they were overjoyed, tears streaming down their faces. I never stopped thinking about my parents and Violetta, but I convinced myself that making the aunt couple happy was my happiness. I had planned to get a job after high school, but Jocelyn said, "You've been too good all this time. Be selfish for once," and encouraged me to go to music school. In college, living alone, they called every day, worried about me, and occasionally visited. Then, one day in my senior year of college,
Shanae, how have you been?
the voice I heard after 10 years was Violetta's.
What? Violetta?
I should have been overjoyed, but all I could muster was,
Yeah, Violetta. How have you been?
a simple phrase. But it showed how much the 10-year gap meant to me. She had called after getting my number from Jocelyn.
I heard you won a competition. Congratulations.
Violetta said, referring to a piano competition I had participated in.
Yeah, thanks.
But it wasn't such a big event to brag about. The competition wasn't covered on national TV or newspapers, but it made the front page of the local paper.
That's not true. You were number 1 in the whole country. No matter the competition, being the best in America is a big deal.
Violetta encouraged. I remembered the time she was the only one in the family who praised me when I scored 100 on a test. Lost in these thoughts, Violetta suddenly lowered her voice.
Shanae, do you hate me?
I was taken aback by the unexpected question. What? Confused, I didn't immediately respond. No, not at all. I was lonely. You didn't contact me for 10 years, but I was taken care of by Jocelyn to properly treat my illness. I never harbored any resentment.
What?
Now Violetta was surprised. She was shocked to learn that I had been given up for adoption, believing that I had gone to live with the aunt couple to treat my illness. Then she told me the truth. I was indeed an abandoned child. I had convinced myself I was with the aunt couple to be cured and to be happy. What was the past 10 years then? I was speechless at Violetta's revelation.
Shanae, I'm sorry. I really am. I thought you knew everything. Dad and Mom said they had told you the truth.
No, Violetta, it's not your fault. Those two are the bad ones. My vague feelings towards my parents solidified into clear hatred.
Those two are struggling now, so they might contact you. Be careful.
Yeah, thanks. A month later, I was visiting the aunt couple's home.
Bing bong.
The doorbell rang. Shanae, you have a visitor, Jocelyn called. In the living room with Jocelyn, I saw them, my parents, after 10 years. They were surprised by my changed appearance. Is that really Shanae? The plain-faced one? They stared as if trying to see through me. You, the listeners, might have had this experience. A student who was unremarkable in middle school becomes strikingly beautiful as an adult. Yes, I might fit that pattern. Not stunningly beautiful, but I had the potential to become beautiful. How have you been? Mom asked. You two are neither guests nor anything else to me. Never come back again. Without saying that, I responded with a smile. Yes, is Violetta doing well? Ah, Violetta. After all the money we put into her lessons, she couldn't keep up at her city school. Ended up graduating from a third-rate university and now works at some unknown company. Living alone now. Who knows how she's doing? Such a nasty tone. By the way, what are you two doing? Where do you live? I deliberately changed the subject. Well, got tired of the city life. Thinking of starting a business here for now. Planning to live in an apartment around here. That seemed quite far from the truth. According to Violetta, Dad quit his job 10 years ago, joined another company through an acquaintance, but that company went bankrupt, and he reluctantly came back home just a month ago.
How about we go out for a family dinner for old time's sake? I'll treat you to anything you like.
Really? Who's saying that? That sounds nice. Why don't the three of us go? Jocelyn suggested kindly. Then I'd like to have king crab. I made my request, and the three of us went to the restaurant I chose.
Order whatever you like. 2 or 3 king crabs. No, eat as much as you want. Don't hold back.
I remembered being told the same thing 10 years ago. Then I'll have one of these king crabs, please.
Sure, right away.
Sorry. Could you also prepare 2 more for takeout?
Of course, no problem.
Dad squinted at the small print on the menu through his reading glasses.
What?
He exclaimed. He had just ordered 3 servings of the most expensive item, king crab, at $85 each. Isn't that a bit excessive? I said, not really meaning it.
No, it's fine. Who are the other 2 servings for?
For Percy and Jocelyn, of course. It wouldn't be fair for me to be the only one enjoying it. And Dad, you said 2 or 3 king crabs, so I took you up on that offer.
Yes, of course.
Dad laughed it off and whispered to Mom while checking his wallet. Well, I'm not that hungry. I'll have the mini size. Dad will have the same. They ordered the cheapest item on the menu, the $28 mini size. By the way, there's something important I need to tell you. Mom started the main conversation. You won first place in the competition, and with your looks, you must be getting offers from everywhere. Do you have a sponsor yet? Just like Violetta said. Well, if you need a manager, Mom can do it. We've been apart for 10 years. We can live together again, like before. How can she say that? I smoothly sidestepped Mom. Thank you for the meal today. It's not much of a thank you, but are you free next Tuesday evening? I'd like you to hear my piano performance. Of course, I wouldn't miss it. Then meet here at this restaurant at 5 in the evening. I handed them the restaurant's business card, and on the promised day, Oh, you're here too? My parents were surprised when they entered the restaurant because the Ann couple was also there. Today we're celebrating a special anniversary, so I've booked the place and invited Percy and Jocelyn too. Exactly 10 years ago, on February 5th, the place where I was invited by my parents to eat from the kids' menu. Unfortunately, the old restaurant had closed, and now it's a chic French restaurant owned by Percy's acquaintance.
Anniversary? Doesn't seem like a birthday. That's right.
They seemed puzzled, apparently having completely forgotten about what happened 10 years ago. Don't you remember? Eating together with this group 10 years ago, you told me to become a child of the grandparents and find happiness. Oh, that's right. I've been so forgetful lately. I completely forgot. Forgetful? So, it was such a trivial event that it could be dismissed with simple words? I wonder if we could listen to the piano performance before dinner since we have some time. I said this and sat down at the piano. I played several classic pieces that everyone would recognize. Dad, Mom, I'm going to play this next piece especially for you, so please listen carefully. Then I played the piano, and my parents dramatically cried as they listened. Shanae, thank you. It was a beautiful piece.
Yes, it was really good.
They said this, pretending to be moved. Excuse me? Could we start preparing for dinner? I called out to the shop staff.
Dad, I wonder what kind of dishes they will serve. Well, it's a fancy place, so I'm looking forward to it.
They quickly wiped away their exaggerated fake tears. At that moment, the long-awaited couple, a man and a woman, arrived. There's Violetta. I waved towards the entrance. At my call, my parents turned around and...
Why is Violetta here? And with the man?
They were utterly surprised. It's to celebrate my sister's wedding and to welcome the new family member. I declared it like a fanfare.
Violetta got married?
My parents looked utterly clueless. It was news to them. Violetta had called me after 10 years partly to share this news. Seeing my parents still confused and struggling to understand the situation, I told them with a smile. Then, you two should leave now. What? My parents were shocked. Do you know the meaning of the song I just played? It was a song about the decision to part ways. Don't you get it? It means today is our farewell. I explained with heavy irony. What? How dare you talk to your parents like that?
That's enough of your jokes,
my parents angrily retorted.
The ones joking around are you two,
Violetta sharply retorted.
Have you forgotten what you did 10 years ago? Saying it was a waste to spend money on a sick daughter, pushing her care onto Jocelyn, and making her buy a $2,000 used piano for $10,000. Ridiculous. Offering to manage me because I won a contest? Parents like you are called toxic parents. Now leave!
Violetta was as cool as a detective cornering a criminal in a 2-hour suspense drama. Then Jocelyn, who had been quiet, spoke up. What these kids are saying is true. I'll say it too, since it's come to this. Open your ears and listen well. I've always hated you. Arrogant and insensitive. Treating your daughter like your property. So from now on, don't involve yourself with us or Violetta. It was the first time I saw the always smiling and gentle Jocelyn so angry. Percy followed up.
You two don't even have 1% of the right to call yourself parents, so please, leave this place now.
It was the first time Percy and Jocelyn referred to their relationship with me as parents and child, and it deeply touched my heart. The two, now cornered with no escape. What will they do? The first to surrender was Dad.
I'm sorry. So sorry, it's Dad's fault. Forgive me.
I wondered if Mom would apologize too, but instead, it's embarrassing for a grown man to apologize deeply. That's why you're such a failure, you stupid husband. She berated her own husband terribly.
What? A failure? Stupid husband? It's all your fault for bringing down my luck.
What? Bringing down your luck? The two of them started arguing, exchanging harsh words.
Is it alright if we start serving dinner? Should we call the police?
The shop staff intervened between the glaring couple. Police? We don't need the police. That was the only line they seemed to agree on. Without saying anything more, they hastily left the scene.
That was quite an entertaining little drama.
We should be more careful not to end up like that. Violetta and Lauren said in unison, smiling. So, how about a toast to celebrate this new beginning? We all cheered triumphantly. What happened to those parents afterward? They had always blamed their daughter's failings for their unhappiness, but eventually realized that the root of all the evil was their own marriage, leading to a divorce. Dad ended up sweating it out at day labor while living a rough life alone, and Mom, unable to find a place to stay, worked as a waitress's helper in a hotel. As for us, who toasted to the new beginning, our stories continued. Violetta, thank you for always watching over me from afar, and congratulations on your marriage once again. I dedicated a wedding song to Violetta, and then, Dad, Mom, thank you for raising me with so much love. I look forward to your continued support. Please listen to this song, filled with my gratitude for you both. The feeling of thanks I had always wanted to express but couldn't. Finally able to call them Dad and Mom. Shanae, we should be the ones thanking you.
Yes, we truly are grateful that you became our daughter.
The day, February 5th, once marked by sad memories, has now become a joyous anniversary for our new family. 6 years have passed since then. I married my high school sweetheart. We were blessed with 2 adorable daughters and now live in a 2-family home with my parents. Some might say I should have dreamed bigger after graduating from music college, but building a happy, smiling family was my biggest dream. Having achieved that dream, I now run a music school at home, teaching children to play the piano.
Here, Mommy, I'll give you a 4-leaf clover.
Thank you. Just as my parents showered me with unconditional love, I want to give the same to my children.
You dare to oppose me, a newcomer? Don't joke around. The hysterical female manager continued her tirade, her anger escalating. Being new, I had always been yelled at by this female manager simply for that reason. I had endured it, thinking I wasn't meeting expectations, but on this matter, I was unwilling to back down. What's with that look? You think you can challenge me and get away with it? I firmly believe that, in this case, both the female manager and McLaren were wrong. However, I also understood that as things stood, neither of them would change their minds. There are plenty of more where you came from. I was angered by these words from the female manager. Anyway, I lacked the confidence to continue under this female manager. Understood, then I'll resign. I won't come in from tomorrow. I retorted to the ranting female manager. I just couldn't forgive this female manager and McLaren. At that moment, I vowed to get my revenge on these two. My name is Ileana, a fresh graduate and new employee. Since I was young, I've loved dogs and cats. I always wanted a job involving dogs and cats. The company I joined sells and wholesales pet supplies and also offers pet sitting services. I was assigned to the pet sitting department. We care for pets when their owners are away and arrange their living environments if requested. It's a convenient service for pet owners, often leading to repeat customers. Despite being a newbie with little experience, I had visited customers several times. I was happy to please the customers and interact with the dogs and cats I love. Being an animal lover, this job felt like a dream come true, my calling since childhood. But I had a problem. It was my boss, the female manager, and my colleague and senior, McLaren. The female manager was domineering and hysterical, often harassing newcomers like me when stressed. She was also easily influenced by power. McLaren, a colleague and senior, was the son of an MD. Being an executive's son, no one dared to speak against him. Taking advantage of this, McLaren was lazy and never worked. The female manager, ever eager to please him, neglected her duties. McLaren, working hard I see. Ileana, come here. Called by the female manager, I was reprimanded for my hair color being too bright. McLaren, hardly working at all, is being praised? I struggled to understand what the female manager was seeing. McLaren gets praised for doing nothing, while I'm criticized for my hair color. Such unfairness. The disparity in how McLaren and I were treated filled me with frustration. Then the female manager added insult to injury. Ileana is no good at anything. What can you actually do? She sighed as she said this. As a newcomer, there were certainly things I couldn't yet handle, but I couldn't recall doing anything to deserve her anger. Eventually feeling down, I boldly asked the female manager, "What am I doing wrong?" She glared at me, closing in. She persistently said that being new doesn't mean getting off easy. Once the female manager entered this mode, she would lecture me for a long time. I've never seen someone as slow to progress as you. Her words deeply upset me. I didn't think I was excelling at work, but I hadn't imagined being this bad. I knew I had to try even harder. But my efforts seemed futile, as I faced harassment from the female manager daily. My colleagues would say not to worry about it, but I couldn't stop thinking about how to avoid the female manager's anger. Then one day, I was scheduled to visit a client with McLaren. The thought of partnering with McLaren filled me with dread. We headed to the client's house in the company car. Upon arrival, we started working right away. Within 5 minutes, McLaren called me over. "Hey, finish up the rest." Saying this, McLaren left in the company car, heading somewhere unknown. Stunned, I was speechless. The client wasn't home, and I couldn't leave, so I followed McLaren's instructions and worked alone. Eventually, the client returned. Our job was done, but I couldn't leave without McLaren. Reluctantly, I called McLaren's mobile phone. He answered after several rings, loud noise audible on his end. "I'm in the middle of something good here. Just wait a bit longer," he said, hanging up abruptly. It seemed McLaren was at a casino. He had dumped the work on me and gone off to have fun. Such behavior can't possibly be allowed, I thought, as anger welled up inside me. Desperately trying to contain my feelings, I asked the client if I could stay a little longer. Of course I couldn't tell them that McLaren was at a casino. McLaren returned 2 hours later. On the way back to the office, I confronted him. Then McLaren made a shocking statement. "Work is such a hassle. You're the newcomer. You should handle it." Hearing this, I was infuriated. If it's such a hassle, why don't you just quit? To my challenge, McLaren, reclining in the passenger seat, raised his voice. "I'll be reporting today's incident to the manager." Unfazed by my words, McLaren was indifferent, suggesting I do as I please. His arrogant attitude persisted until we returned to the office, leaving me with nothing but unresolved anger. Upon our return, the female manager, noticing our late arrival, immediately started a hysterical rant. "Manager, actually today..." As I tried to explain, McLaren unexpectedly interrupted. "It got late because this one was so slow. I had to cover for her." Incredibly, McLaren blamed me for our late return. Stunned and speechless, I was then berated by the female manager. "Learn to do your job properly. Why are you troubling your senior?" Regaining my composure, I confronted the female manager. "Wait a minute." I desperately tried to explain to the female manager, who was sympathizing with McLaren. McLaren, having slipped away to a casino during work, obviously hadn't worked at the client's place we had just visited. Because he was caught up in the casino, he was 2 hours late to pick me up. I honestly told the female manager everything as it happened. However, her response was unbelievable. "Stop lying. What do you hope to achieve by framing your senior, McLaren?" Her words left me frozen. I realized then that arguing with her was pointless. The female manager continued to berate me. I loved my job, wanted to keep doing it, and had worked hard. Why did I have to endure such treatment? Why do you think what I say is a lie, and McLaren is right? My question only fueled the female manager's anger. No matter how angry she became, I couldn't accept it. It was unbearable being accused of lying when I was telling the truth. "How dare you, a newcomer, oppose me? Don't be ridiculous." The hysterical female manager had another outburst of anger. Being new, I had always been yelled at by this female manager. I had put up with it, thinking I wasn't meeting expectations, but I was determined not to back down on this issue. "What's with that look? You think you can defy me and get away with it?" I was convinced that in this case, both the female manager and McLaren were wrong, but I also knew that neither of them would change their minds as things stood. "There are plenty of more where you came from." These words from the female manager infuriated me. I knew I couldn't continue working under her. "Understood. Then I'll resign. I won't be coming in from tomorrow," I declared to the ranting female manager. I couldn't forgive the female manager and McLaren. It was the moment I vowed revenge on them. The next day, having quit, I spent the day at home, not thinking about anything. Then it dawned on me that I had been too self-absorbed. What about the clients I had been serving? Thankfully, I had a fair number of clients who requested my services specifically. Leaving without saying anything felt unfair to them. I decided to inform them of my resignation and thank them for their kindness. I visited each client, explaining my resignation and expressing my gratitude. Each client pleaded with me not to leave, saying they wouldn't request services if I was gone. They truly needed me. Overwhelmed with happiness, I broke down in tears in front of them. Returning home, as the day turned to evening, the mistreatment from the female manager and McLaren resurfaced in my mind, fueling my anger. Despite vowing revenge, I couldn't think of how to carry it out. As I pondered my next steps, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be, I peered through the peephole and was surprised. Standing there trembling were the female manager and the CEO. Realizing what was happening, I understood everything. It seemed the last thing I wanted to be known had come out.
Ileana, I've heard about it.
The CEO calling me Ileana was none other than my father. The pet-sitting company I worked for was run by him. But I didn't want everyone to know I was the CEO's daughter. I loved my job and wanted to be recognized on my own merit. Also, I disliked the idea of being treated differently because I was the CEO's daughter. The one thing that saved me was having a common last name. No one realized I was the CEO's daughter because of it. But having resigned, it didn't matter anymore who knew.
The clients you visited today complained to the company after you left,
the CEO explained. He described the events leading up to his visit. Clients I greeted during the day had called the company furious. They wanted to know why I was let go and said they wouldn't request services without me. The client complaints reached the CEO's ears, unable to be contained by the female manager alone. The CEO, upon learning the situation, demanded an explanation from the female manager. "I'm truly sorry." The female manager, now unusually humble, apologized to me, but I knew the truth. She was apologizing because I was the CEO's daughter. Ignoring her, I reported in detail to the CEO about everything the female manager had done. I will never forgive this. She's just working for her own protection, isn't she? Many employees have been driven to tears and resignation by the female manager's hysteria. Some, like me, loved their jobs and wanted to continue. It was unjust that people who prioritized themselves or leisure over work survived. The CEO asked me to return to the company, so I started going in from the next day. Arriving at work, my colleagues rushed over. They were concerned about me and offered their support. They too were displeased with the female manager and McLaren. Looking around, neither the female manager nor McLaren were in sight. I heard the female manager had been ordered to stay at home until her punishment was decided, and McLaren was supposedly visiting a client. As I was discussing this with my colleagues, the CEO arrived. Worried if I had come to work, he listened as I reported McLaren's misdeeds. My colleagues also began voicing their complaints about McLaren.
"So it is. I need to verify this."
The CEO, having silently listened to the complaints, instructed his secretary to bring the car around. He took me to the client's house where McLaren was supposed to be. Arriving there and looking around, the company car was nowhere to be seen. The CEO then directed the driver to head to a nearby casino. At the casino, we quickly found the company car parked. Inside, we easily located McLaren. "I can't believe he's actually here," I muttered in disbelief. Entering the casino with the CEO, his face was filled with anger. Understandably so. Even as the MD's son, McLaren shouldn't be using a company car for personal enjoyment at a casino.
"What are you doing?"
McLaren, engrossed in the casino, hadn't noticed our approach. He seemed particularly distracted, perhaps due to a winning streak at a slot machine. Tapped on the shoulder by the CEO, McLaren turned around cheerfully, not immediately grasping the situation, and stared at the CEO, his mouth agape.
Why?"
The CEO was furiously angry. I had never seen him so intimidating.
"Don't make me say it again. What are you doing here?"
Startled by the CEO's shout, McLaren stood up from his chair.
Well, I'm just on break."
Pressured by the CEO's intensity, McLaren responded nervously. Even in this situation, I was amazed at how he could still lie so unconvincingly.
"Stop lying."
The CEO's shout, as loud as the casino's noise, made McLaren tremble.
"Pushing your work onto colleagues while you play around. What a privileged position you have."
Ordered outside by the CEO, McLaren followed us out, looking pitiful.
"Drop this notion that being the son of a company executive will get you off the hook. There will be an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Make sure you're there."
Outside the casino, the CEO yelled at McLaren and told me to attend the meeting too. McLaren, now dejected, hung his head. I decided that the time to exact revenge on McLaren and the female manager would be at that moment. The next day, the emergency board meeting called by the CEO was about to start. As I headed to the meeting room, the executives were already gathering. Looking around, I spotted the female manager and McLaren. McLaren, who seemed so defeated yesterday, now had a nonchalant expression. "Don't worry, your father will protect you," as the female manager had assured him. I was appalled by their twisted characters when the CEO arrived, and the meeting began. At the start, the CEO explained the purpose of the urgent gathering. Immediately, the MD, McLaren's father, spoke up.
"Is this really a matter for an emergency board meeting?"
And he showed a stance of defending him. He seemed intent on defending his son. Clearly, he doted on his son. Ignoring the MD's comment, the CEO addressed the gathered executives.
"I believe this is a major loss for the company. But what do you all think?"
The executives all nodded in agreement with the CEO's words. That would be expected. Anyone with common sense wouldn't approve of McLaren's neglect of work for the casino. After explaining the situation, the CEO asked the female manager to explain her behavior. "I didn't know she was the CEO's daughter." The female manager's excuse sounded like a plea to the executives, and the CEO's anger exploded.
"What does it matter if she's the CEO's daughter or the MD's son?"
The CEO's voice echoed through the meeting room.
"You don't seem fit to be a leader."
As the CEO said this, the MD opened his mouth as if to defend the female manager. Then the CEO revealed a shocking truth. The MD and the female manager were having an affair. There had been rumors about the two acting strangely, and upon investigation, it turned out to be true. I couldn't hide my surprise at this revelation.
"I suspected it, but to think it was true. I don't intend to meddle in personal affairs, but appropriate behavior is required at work."
Upon hearing the CEO's words, the MD, who had been defending his son and the female manager, turned pale and fell silent. The female manager was single, but the MD was married. This scandal could have serious repercussions, not just at work, but at home. The CEO, who had effectively silenced the MD, then demanded an explanation from McLaren. Realizing he could no longer rely on his father, McLaren offered a childish excuse, claiming that being caught was just a coincidence and not his usual behavior. I couldn't stay silent at his continued denial. "Even if it was a coincidence, do you think that makes it acceptable?" McLaren glared at me. Even the female manager next to him looked at me with hostility, as if blaming me for their predicament. I decided to play my final card, asking the executives to watch a particular video. It was footage from a pet camera. A pet camera is a small camera installed inside a home to allow pet owners to monitor their pets in real time through their mobile phones while away. After resigning, a client I visited and confided in about my resignation had given me the camera footage, thinking it might be helpful. Projected on the screen was McLaren, ignoring the pet and absorbed in his mobile phone. Confronted with undeniable evidence, McLaren still looked around desperately seeking an excuse. Frozen next to him was the female manager. "Manager, even after seeing this, do you still think McLaren is doing a good job? McLaren, is this also a coincidence?" I had been troubled enough by these two. To clear my conscience, I confronted them with all the feelings I had harbored. "Are you going to say I'm lying again? If you hate your job so much, resign right now." Without a word of rebuttal, both hung their heads. "The company isn't here for you. Why should people who genuinely love their work have to leave because of your unreasonable behavior?" The two who had been glaring at me now had red faces and downturned mouths. The executives watched them with cold expressions. I hadn't intended to rely on my father's position as CEO, but I was grateful that he had convened this executive meeting, allowing me to confront the female manager and McLaren with my pent-up feelings. Before the meeting started, I had asked the CEO to install a small camera in a spot overlooking the meeting room. Watching the two, who had once been so arrogant, now diminished, must have been a relief for my colleagues who had also suffered under them. The female manager and McLaren were being interrogated by the CEO and other executives about how they intended to take responsibility. They looked defeated, a stark contrast to their former selves.
Do you have anything to say to those you have hurt so far?
Urged by the CEO, the female manager and McLaren, appearing resigned, uttered apologies, saying they were sorry. It was the moment when the dissatisfaction I had harbored for so long was finally cleared. Several days after the board meeting, before any formal punishment from the company, McLaren resigned. From what I heard from colleagues, he spends his days in the casino without even looking for another job. The female manager was demoted and now works under employees less experienced than herself. One day, I passed by the former female manager in the office. She avoided eye contact while greeting me, biting her lip. Her pride seemed as high as ever, but she had only herself to blame. I hoped she would experience the same unpleasant feelings she had inflicted on others, now being scolded by a junior executive who had become her boss. A few years later, I was called by the CEO, who asked me,
"Why do you want to hide the fact that you are the CEO's daughter?"
I love my job and wanted to be valued for my individual contributions, not seen differently because of my relationship. I shared my honest feelings with the CEO.
"Isn't that enough? You're cherished by so much of the clients. That's something to be thankful for."
Clients who had always requested me as their pet sitter introduced me to a breeder acquaintance, leading to word-of-mouth recommendations that I could be trusted with their pets. As a result, my clientele grew, and I was busy every day. Recognizing my efforts to always please the clients, I was soon promoted to manager. It was an extraordinary promotion that became the talk of the company, but no one suspected it was because I was the CEO's daughter, as I heard from my colleagues. Being acknowledged as an individual was the most gratifying thing for me. Feeling happy and fulfilled being valued for the work I genuinely love, I am determined to continue striving for rewarding days ahead. An old hag making a 5-figure salary? Lana's words prompted Hector to also chime in, sounding delighted.
"Does that mean you've got a 6-figure savings?"
My eldest son and his wife, peering over my PC screen, exaggeratedly rejoiced at what they saw. I felt uneasy about their attitude. Fortunately, what they saw was just a number without a name attached, so I quickly fibbed. I earned $300, and my savings are just $3,000. Upon hearing this, the expressions of my eldest son and his wife dropped, and they turned to look at me. It seems they're still somewhat in doubt. I kept up the charade desperately. The stuff you saw earlier, that's just an example of a successful person. Amazing, isn't it? My words, clumsily trying to cover up, clearly disappointed my eldest son and his wife. The next day, they said something shocking.
"Mom, can you leave this house?"
"We don't want an old hag leeching off us here. Their words made me resolve to cut ties with my eldest son and his wife. I pretended to be downtrodden. Lana looked over with a mean smirk. Just you wait, I thought to myself as I packed. I had already decided where to go. Pretending to be upset to the very end, I gathered my bare essentials. Thank you for everything. With a sigh to my eldest son and his wife, who didn't even bother to see me off, I left my home. My name is Rachel Rattledge. Just turned 75 last month. I worked in the editing business until retirement age, living modestly on my pension and retirement fund since. My husband passed away 5 years ago. He was involved in a rear-end collision on the highway. The memory still pains me, bringing tears on many days, but recently I've started to look forward a bit more. We had 2 children. My eldest daughter, now 35, is married and lives with her husband's family. The in-laws are kind, and she has a good life with her grandchildren. My second child, Hector, my eldest son, was born when I was 45. We considered having only one child since I was already 40 when my daughter was born, but my husband and I both had incomes and wanted more than one child, being only children ourselves. So Hector was conceived after fertility treatments. Hector married a year before my husband passed away. His wife, Lana, is a bit vain but takes initiative in family events. Their daughter, Mona, born just before my husband's death, is now 5. They moved into my house 6 months ago at Lana's insistence, and I, living alone, happily agreed. I thought living out my days with my grandchild would be a joy. I thought so, but reality wasn't so sweet. After Hector's family moved in, the house became lively, which I loved, but utility bills and food expenses more than doubled. Yet there was no talk of them contributing to living expenses for my eldest son and his wife. Moreover, housework, which was supposed to be shared, was mostly ignored by Lana. Occasionally she cooked, but often it was for taking to friends' houses, using ingredients I had bought. For the first 2 months, the joy of living with Mona outweighed my concerns. But the strain of daily chores and playing with Mona started to weigh on me, an elderly woman. More importantly, my retirement funds were dwindling due to the family's expenses. Reluctantly, I decided it was important to speak honestly and approached my eldest son and his wife. "Hey, you've been living here for a half a year now. I hate to ask, but can you contribute a bit to the living expenses? Food and utility bills have more than doubled." As I said this, my eldest son and his wife looked at each other and then burst into laughter. Confused, I just tilted my head. Then, Lana, laughing and holding her stomach, replied, "Rachel, you're always joking. Asking for living expenses while we're graciously living with you? What kind of wicked mother-in-law are you? Nobody does that these days." "No, I'm not joking." As I denied Lana's words, the expressions vanished from the faces of my eldest son and his wife. Then, with a blank expression, Hector quietly said to me, "Mom, are you trying to mooch off your son?" I was so shocked that I couldn't immediately respond. I wasn't mooching. I was just asking for a little help with living expenses. Besides, they both have dual incomes. Lana works part-time, but Hector is a full-time employee at a large corporation. They can't be short of money, yet they acted as if I was the villain for asking. "Rachel, I can't believe it. We're working hard for Mona's sake, and you're asking for our money?" "I never thought you'd be such a money-grubbing mother." Their harsh words almost brought me to tears, but I couldn't back down now. I persisted and finally got them to agree to contribute $500 a month. It's nowhere near enough to cover the increased expenses, but I decided to be grateful for anything. Since then, Lana has repeatedly called me wicked. Hector doesn't stop her and even joins in. The only consolation is that they don't do it in front of Mona. Perhaps because I've often looked after her, Mona is very attached to me. Even my eldest son and his wife can't speak ill of me in front of their dear daughter. Lana's part-time job, initially only in the mornings, gradually became full day, and now she's out all day. The job is child-friendly, so when I absolutely can't watch Mona, Lana reluctantly takes her along. Mona attends a nearby prestigious preschool, famous for its enriching experiences, but also for its substantial monthly fees. Shockingly, I was the one who ended up paying those fees. It started when Lana tearfully told me she couldn't afford the high cost 1 month. What was supposed to be a one-time thing became a regular expectation. So my savings dwindled. Then I received an offer from my former company to work as a web writer. They wanted me to write a column from an editor's perspective, offering a stipend plus incentives. It was a great opportunity, and I could work from home, allowing me to manage Mona's pickups and household chores. I decided to give it a try, and it turned out to be a huge success. My columns became increasingly popular, leading to various job offers and higher rates per project. After half a year, I was earning more than an average full-time salary. Busy as I was, writing again and receiving appreciation for my work filled me with joy, and I immersed myself in it. However, I kept my job a secret from my eldest son and his wife. Sometimes when deadlines loomed and housework fell behind, they made snide remarks, but they never questioned why, which worked in my favor. A year into web writing, my monthly income exceeded 5 figures. When I hit a record $18,400 one month, my face broke into a smile in front of my computer screen. If things continued like this, my future options would certainly expand. While I was pondering this alone, a voice came from behind me. "Hey, Rachel, what's that? You working from home?" I gasped and turned around. There stood Lana. As soon as she saw my screen, her face lit up and she called Hector over. When Hector arrived, she pointed at my screen and exclaimed excitedly, "An old hag making a 5-figure salary?" Lana's words prompted Hector to also chime in, sounding delighted. "Does that mean you've got a 6-figure savings?" My eldest son and his wife, peering over my PC screen, exaggeratedly rejoiced at what they saw. I felt uneasy about their attitude. Fortunately, what they saw was just a number without a name attached, so I quickly fibbed. I earned $300, and my savings are just $3,000. Upon hearing this, the expressions of my eldest son and his wife dropped, and they turned to look at me. It seems they're still somewhat in doubt. I kept up the charade desperately. "The stuff you saw earlier? That's just an example of a successful person. Amazing, isn't it?" My words, clumsily trying to cover up, clearly disappointed my eldest son and his wife. The next day, they said something shocking. "Mom, can you leave this house?" "We don't want an old hag leeching off us here." Their words made me resolve to cut ties with my eldest son and his wife. As I pretended to be downtrodden, Lana looked over with a mean smirk. "Just you wait," I thought to myself as I packed. I had already decided where to go. Pretending to be upset to the very end, I gathered my bare essentials. "Thank you for everything." With a sigh to my eldest son and his wife, who didn't even bother to see me off, I left my home. I immediately moved to a nearby hotel. The next day, I visited my childhood home. My cousin was living there with her daughter and granddaughter, having become a single mother. I had asked my cousin to look after the house, which once belonged to my parents, as a place for her and her daughter to live. My cousin's family warmly welcomed me. I decided to plan my next steps there. When all my plans were in place, my eldest son and his wife came to visit. Apparently, they found me by following a Christmas card in Hector's memory. Despite having treated me so poorly, Lana was suddenly acting submissive upon seeing me. "Rachel, how are you? We were worried when you left so suddenly." "Oh, but you were the ones who told me to leave, weren't you?" They probably didn't expect to be confronted in front of Mona. Lana's smile twitched as if struggling to stay in place. I stood in the entrance, blocking them from entering the house. At first, Lana and Hector were taken aback, but soon they became assertive. "Mom, you've cooled off by now, right? We're not mad. Come back." "Yeah, Rachel, we're family, aren't we?" I couldn't help but laugh at my eldest son and his wife's insincerity. They watched me with strained smiles as I laughed. After I had my fill of laughter, I replied, "Hector, I'm not interested in whether you're angry or not. I've decided to live here now. I won't be returning there anymore." "What, Mom? That's harsh. We can't make it without you. Mona is missing you too. Stop being stubborn and come back." Hector's words made me imagine the current state of my home. Knowing Lana, she's probably not doing any cleaning. The house must be in disarray, unfit for inviting anyone over. It's an old house, so there must be bugs too. And Lana's cooking is terrible. In other words, their request for me to return probably means, "Come back and do the housework." I refuse. I'm going to enjoy my retirement. "What? How dare you?" Lana's indignant response only made me laugh. I pointed to her brand new designer bag. You spend all your money on flashy things like that. No wonder you can't afford living expenses. Without me, you must be struggling to afford such luxury, right? My words hit the mark, and the eldest son and his wife trembled, unable to retort. But they still didn't seem to be giving up. Reluctantly, I pulled out 2 photos I had brought from the room. Seeing them, my eldest son and his wife turned pale. What? Why does Rachel have these? They were evidence of their infidelities, discovered during my investigation. Lana was arm in arm with an unknown man entering his house, and Hector was entering a hotel with a young woman. Both photos clearly showed their companions' faces.
You were cheating? And with my colleague?
You were cheating too. That girl, isn't she from my workplace? Turns out both of them were having affairs with someone from their respective workplaces. When I discovered this during the investigation, it gave me a headache. It was as if they were asking to be caught. I held the photos between my fingers, shaking them slightly as I laughed. Affairs with colleagues, how impressive. Or rather, being so engrossed with someone else when you're married is just low. My words made the eldest son and his wife shudder. They seemed to be aware that they had done something wrong. I handed them the photos as a parting gift. Their expressions were a mix of emotions. Then I decided to give them another surprise. Actually, I've invited some people over today.
Some people?
As Hector tilted his head in confusion, I exaggeratedly called out over the fence. Burke, Agnes, please come over. Dad? Mom? Lana's shocked voice echoed in front of the house. I barely held back my laughter as I guided Lana's parents to stand beside me. Lana's parents looked stiff, their faces beyond pale. I've explained the whole situation to Lana's parents.
Lana, what have you done? Disrespecting your husband's mother, and even driving her out of her own house? And an affair, too. Shame on you.
Lana recoiled at her father Burke's furious outburst. I only let Mona enter the house. I didn't want to expose her to any more adult conflicts. It's not like that, Dad. She said she would give us the house.
What do you mean? It's not like that. You don't refer to your mother-in-law as this person in normal circumstances.
Beside the enraged Burke, Lana's mother Agnes stood with an expressionless face. She must be extremely upset. Despite her expressionless face, Agnes's clenched fists were shaking with tension. Lana, oblivious to her mother's state, sought help. Mom, you understand, right? I haven't done anything wrong. It's all a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Indeed, we misunderstood you. We knew we spoiled our only daughter. But we thought we had instilled enough education in you not to be an embarrassment in public. But it seems we were mistaken. A child who can cause trouble for others without remorse. Agnes said this and glared sharply at Lana. Lana let out a small scream and stepped back. Then Agnes raised her voice. I'll correct your rotten attitudes, both of you. You're moving in with us. Don't think it'll be easy.
Huh?
Hector shrieked at Agnes's ferocity, and for good reason. Agnes is actually a judo teacher, so living with her meant mandatory participation in judo practice. Lana had once said she left home right after getting a job because she disliked it. Caught off guard by these developments, the eldest son and his wife stood dumbfounded. Then I decided to reveal the truth. By the way, the income you saw on my screen before kicking me out, that's actually mine. What? Lana looked at me, more shocked than ever. I almost laughed, but managed to hold it back. Hector looked doubtful, then half smiled.
Mom, are you just being a sore loser now? You said you had no income, right? And there wasn't much left in the bank book either.
I didn't know when they had seen my bank book, but Hector said this with a smug look. I sighed exaggeratedly and gave them my response. Obviously, I wouldn't keep a large sum where you can find it. It's obvious you'd try to take it.
What? Then where is it?
Hector raised his voice, and I showed him my mobile phone screen. It displayed my online banking account. See my online bank? It says deposit here. My income is now over 5 times what Hector makes. Hector was speechless. But Lana, who had been stunned, quickly thought of something and began apologizing to me with a sly smile. Rachel, I'm sorry for everything. I realize now that we've been able to live thanks to you. So why don't we go back to that house and live as a family? Hector, regaining his senses, joined in the apology. But I couldn't accept such an insincere money-driven apology. I was about to point this out when a voice came from behind me. Dad, Mom, please don't bully Grandma anymore. I turned to see Mona, her face red and tears in her eyes, standing behind me. She was bravely expressing her anger in her small body, and my eldest son and his wife were shocked, but quickly began to argue. That's not it, Mona. We're just asking Grandma to help us because she has a lot of money. For your sake. Yeah, Mona. Didn't you say you wanted a piano? Grandma's going to buy you a big one. I sighed at my eldest son and his wife's selfish reasoning. They thought they had fooled Mona, but it clearly hadn't worked. I don't want a piano. Mona screamed, her voice breaking into sobs. Dad and Mom, you always received kindness from Grandma, but all you do is badmouth her. My teacher said that people who constantly speak ill of others go to hell. Do you want to go to hell, Dad and Mom? I don't. I want all the people I love to go to heaven. Lana broke down crying at Mona's words, and Hector awkwardly turned his face away. I hugged Mona and reassured her. It's okay, Mona. When Dad and Mom live with their grandparents, they'll become good people and go to heaven. Agnes nodded at my words. Mona, smiling broadly at this, left the entrance, took her parents' hands, and went back to Lana's parents' house. Later on, Lana's family moved into her parents' house. Both were being trained daily at the practice ground, correcting their lifestyle habits and fickle hearts. Hector, who was not fond of physical exercise, was getting thoroughly trained, often coming home with bruises. Mona, who had always wanted to learn judo, seemed to be enjoying it every day. On the day of their move, Agnes sold all the luxury bags and other items, using the money for living expenses, and planned to split any further costs equally. The living expenses I had been paying were being deducted from the money they owed and paid into Lana's parents' household fund each month. I didn't need the money, so I decided to save it all for Mona's use. After that, I sold my house and moved back to my childhood home. My cousin and her daughter and granddaughter welcomed me warmly, and I'm enjoying a comfortable life. I also hired my cousin's daughter as a housekeeper, paying her a salary to take care of everything at home, so she could spend more time with her child. Mona now visits my house about twice a month. We see each other less frequently than when we lived together, but she's still my dear beloved only grandchild. She has a judo competition coming up and asked me to come watch, which I plan to do. Luckily, my work can be done anywhere as long as I have my PC. Right now, Mona and I are also planning to go on a long vacation together. I want to fully enjoy and make the most of the things I love and the life ahead of me.